Hello, my name is Gareth. You're watching the Hub Online Network. It is election season, so let's get to it. Also, if you're watching live today, we're going to bring back the call-in system. So you can give me a call at 250-457-0538, and I'll take your phone calls live during the show, okay? Now, not only is it election season, but this week in Ashcroft and everywhere, it is officially Rail Safety Week. So from September 21st to 27th, this is from the Ashcroft Village Facebook page. They say that we will be sharing information and resources to help our community stay safe around the major railways that pass through the village. Our public works crew have installed a new Look, Listen, Live decal at the Cariboo Rd CN Railway crossing. So today we interviewed Patty Kenvig from the Ashcroft terminal, and so she gave us some really good information about the terminal, and she talked about Rail Safety Week. So let's play that video. Hello, my name is Gareth. You're watching the Hub Online Network. We have Patty Kenvig. Is that how I pronounce that?
You betcha.
Awesome. From the Ashcroft terminal in today. So we're going to talk about everything from the terminal to the Ashcroft Slough Society to the working group that's just been taking place. So let's get to it. Awesome. So Patty, let's talk a little history of the terminal. Why don't we start with just what the terminal is, what the terminal does, and your role in the terminal.
Awesome. The terminal actually did exist before me. It was purchased, it was about 20 years ago that it was purchased by the Ashcroft terminal. And at that time it was just a small little one line, very small business going on. Over the years, obviously, we've gone through some major expansion projects. I've worked there now, I'm coming up on 7 years.
Wow.
So, yeah. When I first started there was only probably 5 people working there. We were just a small group. It was a family-run business. We had 6 tracks at the time, just a couple of customers. Enough that we were busy, the 5 of us. You did everything from sweeping the floors to going up on site, meeting the train crews. Like, you just did whatever you had to get the job done. Now, fast forward to today, we have 26 tracks. We do all sorts of things on site. We transload all sorts of material. We have railcar storage going on. Our staff has grown significantly. We've gone from, like I said, about 5 people to now we have, I think, 35 people on site here in Ashcroft.
Awesome.
Which is awesome. Yeah.
So trains come in, and what do you guys do with the trains?
So Ashcroft Terminal, we often refer to it as like a 3-legged stool. We have 3 pieces to our business. One is transloading. That's our bulk business. So we take things out of rail cars into trucks or out of trucks into rail cars.
Okay.
For multiple different commodities. Then we also have a rail car storage piece where we have rail cars that come in and they're just stored kind of like a parking lot. There's just a lack of rail car storage spots across the country. So customers use us for that. Different lengths of times, sometimes short, sometimes it can be like over a year long projects. And then the third piece is the piece that we're really excited about getting into, and that's the container business. And we were 60% owners of PSA. And so they're one of the largest container port operators in the world. And they saw the value that Ashcroft Terminal has in Canada and in the movement of goods. And so now with them, we have this large container expertise at our fingertips that we're looking at developing our container program.
You're talking about the containers that would ride on trains.
On chassis, yeah. So domestic in Canada, also coming from overseas into Canada and exporting, importing, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So why Ashcroft?
So Ashcroft, lucky us, we're very unique for a number of reasons. Mainly Ashcroft Terminal, our property, has both main lines running through it. So it's one of the only places that we're aware of that have both main lines. So we have both CP and CN main lines coming through our property. And what that means is that every single container or rail car that has to go to the ports in Vancouver, they have to go through our property. And so all of a sudden that means we can add efficiency to the logistics of goods in Canada.
Okay.
So for example, like right now, you look on the highways, we have loaded lumber trucks, driving down to Vancouver. They have to wait in their line, and down there it's like this big mess. They have to make like 5-6 different stops just to get their products on the correct cars, on the correct ships, and whatever they have to do down there. At the same time, we have the empty rail cars going through our property down to Vancouver, having to do that same movement, so they can get the empty rail car with the loaded trucks to do the transload down there. So you look at Ashcroft Terminal, we have both main lines. We have the empty rail cars, so let's stop the empty rail cars here. Let's bring the loaded trucks here. We can do that transload on our property. We have lots of space. And then the rail cars leave our site ready to go onto the ships. They don't have to do any further movements down in Vancouver. And the trucking, all of a sudden we're saving all those truck miles on the highways. So that's the container piece. So for our other bulk business, we're just a really great central location for transloads to occur. Prior to us, we've had customers that have had to drive to Regina to get their product to bring it back to BC. Now we have all the product here and they're coming to us. So we're closer to the producers and we're closer to the people who are using these goods.
How many trains come through on a typical day?
Oh, well, I mean, Ashcroft Terminal, we're serviced once daily from CP Yard in Kamloops. And we're currently working on the development of the CN connection. But in terms of, the amount of mainline trains that go by, I don't even know. I couldn't hazard a guess. I mean, obviously you live in Ashcroft, you get stuck at those crossings all the time. It is a busy corridor. We get lots of traffic on those main lines.
So at this time, you guys you said that you're expanding or you've expanded.
Yeah.
What is your property line now? Like how big has the terminal gotten?
Right, so our property lines haven't changed. Our industrial land, we have 320 acres of industrial land, and
Okay.
then we have a large agricultural piece around the outside that we can't develop, but it's a good natural buffer for our industrial land, which goes obviously, up the mountainside. It's hard to see without having a map in front of us that goes up the mountain, and obviously down to the water, less the high water mark.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the, hang on, let me back up here. What does the agreement look like between you guys and CN and CP? Do you have some kind of safety agreements, liability stuff when they're on your guys' property?
Well, I'm not sure exactly of the agreements. That would be our commercial team that would do that stuff. But at the end of the day, CN and CP both have right-of-ways. They own that on either side of their main line all throughout Canada. I think it's varying degrees, anywhere from 30 feet up to 100 feet.
Oh, wow.
It can be, yeah. And I don't know how they make that determination of how big it is, but so they do own a piece of property on either side of the main line, and that's just for their safety, to keep people away from their main lines. And also, obviously, they need access to be able to do work if they have things break down on the railroads or whatever.
So have you guys, in your expansion, my understanding is you're doing a bunch of construction. Mm-hmm. Is that for just the container part of the business that you're taking over?
So no, it's not just for the container business. Obviously the big exciting piece for us is that we weren't tied into CN's main line. So all of CN's product that came to our site actually came through Kamloops to CP to our site.
Okay.
But now we're going to have direct access to CN. So now all of a sudden our customers can send us rail cars directly through CN Kamloops to us without having to go to CP and have that weird interchange in Kamloops.
Right. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that has happened recently in Ashcroft is there's a place called the Slough, and
Yes.
it's contentious topic at the moment in
Yes,
town.
for sure.
But you guys have sought a group of people, and you called it the working group.
That's right.
Can you explain what the working group is?
Right. So, I mean, as long as, Ashcroft Terminal has owned the property, and for long as I've lived in Ashcroft, which is now over 10 years, everybody, of the slough. And Ashcroft Terminal knows about the slough. They know that it's important to the community. And so as things are changing due to construction, we thought, well, let's create this working group just to get some feedback. And because access to the slough is not an option, to be honest, it was always illegal to get there, right? Just to clarify, we didn't make it illegal now all of a sudden. 20 years ago when they purchased the property, it was illegal. There was a road that went through our property, a private road that went through our property that went to a crossing that people used to get there. At that time, we were so small, we didn't have the resources to have somebody sitting out there tracking people down, making sure people aren't trespassing. And to be honest, we weren't developing that piece of land, so it wasn't something that we were, looking at regularly. Now we're developing that piece of land, and we have the resources to say, okay, we have to enforce this. It's dangerous. We have heavy rock trucks going. The main line has trains going. It's not safe to have people walking through there. That road is half gone already because we're getting the earth ready to lay rail. And so now what we've done is we've removed the private road that was to their illegal access. So that they can't get to that crossing anymore.
And so we thought that we had just a 7-minute clip. Turns out we uploaded the whole video. So we're going to stop it there. But thank you, Patty, for coming in. If you want to see the whole video, it's going to be posted tomorrow on our YouTube channel. So check that out. There's lots of really good information in regards to the terminal, the Ashcroft Slough Society, and the working group that has just ended. But in talks for Rail Safety Week, we do have a short second video. So let's play that one now.
Hi, this is Mark Garneau, Minister of Transport. Today marks the beginning of Rail Safety Week. Rail safety remains my absolute priority, and we've made considerable improvement over the past 5 years, but we need to continue to look at ways of making our rail lines even safer. Incidents around railways are still too common. Last year, there were 230 rail-related incidents in Canada, resulting in 66 fatalities and 46 serious injuries. This year, there have already been 100 rail-related incidents, 34 fatalities, and 18 serious injuries. Even one fatality is too many. It only takes a split second of inattention at a railway crossing to be seriously injured or killed. Likewise, shortcuts across railway tracks can cut lives short. Every incident, every tragedy leaves a family in grief, a train crew traumatized, and a community devastated. Our government is committed to taking all the necessary steps to keep Canadians safe by improving rail safety around railway tracks and trains. Despite the pandemic, we did not put rail safety on hold, and we will not hesitate to continue to take the necessary actions to improve the safety of tracks across the country. While significant efforts have been made to educate people and communities about incidents and fatalities related to dangerous behavior around railway tracks, together we must continue to look at ways to further reduce these largely preventable deaths and injuries from happening. Rail safety is a shared responsibility among jurisdictions and an issue that Transport Canada cannot resolve on its own. Together with our partners, Operation Lifesaver and railway companies, as well as communities that are situated near railways, we are once again raising public awareness of the potential dangers of railway crossings and from trespassing on railway property in the context of Rail Safety Week. Rail Safety Week will run from September 21st to 27th. This year it coincides with the return of kids to school and the reopening of the economy, which means many people are also returning to work and Canadians are starting to travel a bit more. This week is a great opportunity to remind everyone to be extra vigilant around trains and tracks as daily routines continue to change across the country. Don't trespass on tracks and help us stop track tragedies. Be rail smart. Stop, look, listen, and live at crossings. This could save lives.
So now moving away from Rail Safety Week, we have the Ashcroft newsletter. Is this monthly? It's a monthly newsletter. So we're just going to talk about a few highlights from this thing. So it says COVID-19 update. With school back in session and COVID-19 cases trending upward, it is important that we act with the best interest of our community's most vulnerable in mind. The province recommends keeping social bubbles limited to 6 people, continuing to practice good hand hygiene, and staying home if sick. Planning or attending gatherings of 50 people or more is not allowed and subject to fine. Nightclubs and banquet halls throughout the province are closed until further notice, and keeping track of public health officers' recommendations in mind, the village staff are reviewing reopening plans for the arena, curling rink, and other facilities. The pool season wrap-up. So the Ashcroft pool closed for the season on September 6th. Though the summer was not without challenges, our pool staff helped ensure a safe and successful season. Adjusting to COVID-19 virus meant more staff training, increased cleaning, programming adjustments, and changes to everyday operations. Despite these changes, the pool was widely used and met its 50-person capacity nearly every day for the first month and a half of the summer. A big thank you to all the pool team and the public for doing their part to allow the pool to open safely. So that's pretty awesome. Congratulations to the pool. What else do we got here? Let me flip over to the second page. So this is some things that the council has been up to. So the council endorsed the 2019 Village of Ashcroft annual report and amendments. Residents are able to view their annual report on the village office website. The council directed staff to investigate the possibility of a joint community bylaw officer with Clinton and Cache Creek, which would be interesting. Council approved payment of both fire and water treatment plant debt. Council endorsed the Drylands Arena reopening plan. Further discussion and planning is required before reopening. Council approved a $500 grant and aid request in support of the Soups On program at St. Albans Church. Council also approved a $500 grant and aid request in support of the Sage Sound Singers to produce their annual Christmas concert virtually, which will be filmed by the Hub Online Network and posted, I believe, just before Christmas. Council accepted the terms of the TNRD building inspection contract renewal for a 3-year term. And over the week of September 20th, Council is attending the annual Union of BC Municipalities, or UBCM, convention. Like most other events this year, the convention has moved to a virtual platform that will enable local governments to interact, network, participate in workshops, and attend addresses by the Premier, other party leaders, and keynote speakers, which is interesting because we're in the middle of now an election season, and everybody no longer has a job in the government. So that is what's going on in the village of Ashcroft at the moment. Now on to Cache Creek. So Cache Creek is having a tax sale next Monday at 10 a.m., which will be aired live on the Hub Online Network. So be sure to tune in and see what goes and what stays, or what gets bought up in this, I suppose. Now, everybody that has a piece of property that is up for this tax sale does have the opportunity to pay the taxes up until that day, I believe. A whole year afterwards. So that makes it a little bit more interesting. And also, we did an interview with Councillor Wendy Coombs yesterday, and here is a little bit of that. So yeah, Wendy Coombs here visiting us all the way from Cache Creek. Wendy has been a councillor for 6 years. And well, no, you're in your second term.
16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 4.
Yes.
It was the by-election in 2016.
But we'll let Wendy talk for herself, and we'll see how. So, why did you get started in the world of politics?
I blame it on my parents. They dragged me to a city council meeting when I was a teenager, and although it bored the heck out of me, I guess I grew up in a rather political family. We were always talking about politics, and then I decided I wanted to go into journalism. When I was 13, we had something on the news called Watergate. Took up a lot of interest with my family. So doing that for just about 40 years, I sat in a lot of council meetings, and even a few provincial level meetings. And, you know, you sit there, and if you sit there long enough, you go, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Oh, boy, I could do that better. Boy, what a bunch of boneheads. Now I'm in that chair. So when the opportunity arose, I retired in February 2016, and unfortunately, Councillor Herb Hofer passed away that spring. So there was an opportunity to run for by-election, so it's the opportunity I was waiting for, so I tossed my hat in.
Awesome.
I didn't realize I was going to have to run against Gareth Smart.
Well, I actually came in like way last, third place. There was three of us running.
It was close.
But I couldn't have lost to a better person. So let's go back to you being a journalist then. Did you have, so of all the things that journalists cover, did you have a keen interest in politics specifically, or was it just sort of a byproduct of the job for you?
It's pretty much a byproduct. When you're in a small newsroom, and they're all small these days, you just cover everything. So you go from the First Nations sit-in at the local college to school board to council to Mrs. Smith and her prize-winning dahlias. You get it all.
So did you run the newspaper here for 40 years?
14.
14, okay.
Yes.
But you've been a journalist for...
All over.
Awesome. So now that you've made the transition, and you were saying that as you sat in on council meetings that you felt like people, you know, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Do you feel that now that you're on the other side, do you feel that you are doing the things that you thought the council should have been doing?
I'm doing the things that those councils were doing. They just look different from the other side of the bench.
Is there an example of that? So,
nothing specific that you can think of. It's just like, well, why is it taking so long? Why did they choose this and not that? And you know, when you're in that position, you realize that there are rules that you have to follow. There are levels that you have to go one at a time. Towns don't get to do everything that they want to do. Sometimes they have to follow rules that are put out by the province or by the federal government. Bureaucracy, legislation is something that it's hard for some people to deal with because it takes a while, but that's how we learn patience.
well, it's amazing that how you put it that way, because usually when I talk to people about councils or federal politics or anything like that, they always say, oh, why don't they just vote on it and do it, right? So a lot of people don't know about the time frames and the lengths that a lot of councils have to go through and the processes of just getting one piece of legislation to go through. Mm-hmm. So now you have sat on 2 councils. Let's see if you'll fall for the trap. Which council was better?
They both have their positives and their negatives.
Awesome. So that was a very interesting interview with Wendy Coombs. If you want to see the whole thing, it will be posted tomorrow on our YouTube channel, so stay tuned for the rest of that. Now, moving on to some provincial news. Okay, so we'll do one funny one before we get into the serious stuff about the election that's coming up. So this is actually a shout out. So thank you, Ashley Wadwani. I apologize if I said your name wrong. This is a journalist from Black Press. So This is about Nanaimo Bar. So amid a pandemic, who would have thought a how-to dessert video posted on Twitter would be causing such a stir amongst British Columbians? BuzzFeed Canada recently posted a tasty video on Twitter showing how to make Nanaimo bars 4 different ways. While some were disturbed by the notion that birthday cake Nanaimo bars would even be suggested as an alternative to the traditional bar, it was the lack of namesake. Instead calling the dessert a Canadian chocolate bar that sparked the loudest concerns. So here are a few people's tweets. No, just no, quit it, knock it off. These are an insult to everything that is a Nanaimo bar. The people responsible should be schooled on actual Nanaimo bars, wrote at TTH or TT Hip Freak. Quote, this video is called 4 Wrong Ways to Make a Nanaimo Bar plus 1 Wrong Way to Call It, wrote at Plant4Ward Fam. So according to the Food Network's Great Canadian Cookbook, the first known recipe for Nanaimo bars appeared in the 1952 Women's Auxiliary of the Nanaimo Hospital Cookbook. At the time, it was simply named a chocolate square. It was in Edith Adams' cookbook, published a year later, that the dessert was appropriately labeled the Nanaimo Bar. In a separate tweet, BuzzFeed Canada apologized for the error, citing the colleagues in Los Angeles had made the video. Now, I personally do not like Nanaimo bars. I'm not a big fan of coconut pieces, but to each their own, and we just thought it was a fun story. So now we're going to talk about elections. So there's an election coming up on October 24th now. It has been called officially as of yesterday. John Horgan made a speech about this. So after rolling out dozens of spending announcements and updates in recent days, BC Premier John Horgan has officially terminated his minority government agreement with the BC Green Party and called an election for October 24th. Opposition parties have demanded Horgan not call an election a year early as BC COVID-19 cases increase to the point where the province has its highest per capita infection rate in Canada. Horgan has requested the province's Lieutenant Governor Janet Austin to call the next election. The BC NDP said in a statement Monday morning, the party said Horgan will address how British Columbians deserve a say in our economic recovery and will decide the future of our province. BC's election laws specify a minimum of 28-day campaign period with an election falling on a Saturday, so the next available date from Monday's announcement is October 24th. The law currently specifies the next election in the fall of 2021, but permits the Lieutenant Governor to accept a recommendation for an earlier vote. So here's a short video of John Horgan announcing his election from his Facebook account.
Hey everyone, John Horgan here. We just called the election. Now I know it's not what we all thought we would be doing when 2020 got started, but this pandemic has set us all back. Everything's changed, and there are unprecedented challenges ahead of us. I know some people are asking, why now? And I've got to tell you, I struggled with this decision. It was not easy, but I believe in my heart it's the best decision for all of us. Right now, we need to know that people are with us in our plan to fight this pandemic and build an economic recovery that works for everyone. We can't afford to be sidetracked by another 12 months of partisan politics, another year where the other parties can turn us back when we try to make decisions to help people. The choices, to me, are clear. The BC Liberals are pushing for changes that benefit the wealthy and the well-connected at your expense. We have a plan to keep you safe and to make life better and more affordable for people. We've accomplished a lot on what matters most to people, and there's a lot of work ahead of us. The question now is, where do British Columbians want to go, and who do they want to lead them? I'm asking for your support to keep BC on the right track. Like a lot of things these days, this election is going to be different from the one we had 3.5 years ago. But I know we can do it safely. And together, we can keep BC moving forward, not for the people at the top, but for everyone.
So last week we sat down with our local MLA, Jackie Taggart, and we spoke about this, the possibility of a snap election in some detail. But here is a little bit of what Jackie had to say, and you can watch this whole interview, of course, on our YouTube channel again. And she had a lot of really good information, and unfortunately this is just before the election was actually stated, but we were talking under the presumption that this was going to actually happen. So let's play that one. Well, let's jump into probably the most meatiest bit of what's going on recently, and that is, of course, the opportunity to have a snap election, as mentioned before. So let's talk about the pros and cons to both the Liberals and the NDP side to what a overnight election might mean to the province.
Well, to say that we would be disappointed to have John Horgan call an election, an early election in the next couple of weeks, would be an understatement. We've been very clear that we do not believe that it is the time to go to the polls, that we're in the middle of a pandemic. And there is no reason for John Horgan to call an election except that he's riding high in the polls and he thinks he can win a majority government. We passed legislation that set dates for elections so that this kind of discussion and disruption didn't happen anymore. And we've been following that legislation for at least 4 elections. We know when the election date is. Politics aren't played with, oh, are we going to have an election or not? And the public knows when the election is. And so with the set dates, we do our work, we know when the election's coming, and everybody knows the rules. You can see that the last couple of weeks, the question about the election has just been riding the media waves like crazy. And it makes people go, well, why would we have an election right now? And you know, we worked really hard as an official opposition not to politicize the pandemic, to not question and to support the work being done by Dr. Bonnie Henry. And by the Premier suggesting there may be an election, you know, we trusted that, that he would appreciate that we did not politicize this health crisis. And I can say personally, I'm disappointed that he's playing games at a time when he should be governing. He should be looking at the recovery. He should be looking at the unemployment numbers that we have in British Columbia. And he should be providing a plan that is 6 months overdue for how we're going to recover from COVID-19.
So I've, up until today, I've actually never heard of an election being done like this. I've heard of minority governments getting in trouble and the vote of no confidence, and thus we have an election. But I've never heard of a premier calling something when everything is seemingly fine. Which, the first thing that jumped to my mind, and I don't like giving a personal opinion in these things, but the first thing that jumped to my mind was, okay, so everything's going well. If we vote now, they might do better now. But is there a shoe that's going to drop if we don't vote now?
Well, if I was Premier John Horgan, I'd be looking at the polling numbers. People say, I mean, there is no doubt that British Columbia has done very well through Dr. Bonnie Henry in its response to the pandemic. And so when people say to me that Premier Horgan has done a great job, British Columbia has done a great job. And part of it is that we came together as 3 parties and said this is a pandemic, it is a health crisis, and we're not going to play politics with it. We are going to listen to the public health officer. Now, Premier Horgan has, his actions are reflected in the polls, and he is taking a political risk in considering an early election. It is pure politics, because we know that we are looking at a second wave coming. We know that we are $12.5 billion in debt due to the COVID outcomes and what COVID has meant to the economy. We know it could be worse than that. We also know that the unemployment is going to be huge. We know CERB is ending. We know small businesses' taxes are coming due. We have yet to see, quite honestly, the huge impact of COVID on our economy and on what it means to live in British Columbia. So if you're John Horgan.
All right. So, yeah, thank you so much, Jackie, for coming in and doing that interview. I'm sure we'll see you again fairly soon due to the election. Now, since last Friday, 366 more people in BC have been diagnosed with COVID-19 and 4 others have died. Dr. Bonnie Henry, BC's provincial health officer, said in a news conference Monday on the 21st that broken down by day, there was 121 new cases on Friday to Saturday, 117 from Saturday to Sunday, and 128 from Sunday to Monday. The new numbers for today is 96 new cases, which brings us to 8,304 total cases going on in the province. Now, hang on, pandemic BC and precautions have begun. I'm just trying to find, she talks about the election here. We have been working with Elections BC since March, when municipal elections had been planned for later that month, and we had been working with them continuously since that time, recognizing that there was potential for elections as this pandemic progressed, both municipal, provincial, and federal, Henry said. Henry said that her authority to make and enforce public health rules is independent and not affected by the election call. She quotes, "I can say that Premier Horgan did not ask for my advice before calling an election, and nor would I expect him to," Henry said. "That is part of the political process, and I am not involved in it." So, Health Minister Adrian Dix is no longer going to be a part of the daily COVID updates, since all minister jobs are now over at the moment due to the election. So it's just going to be Dr. Bonnie Henry on her own for the foreseeable future. Now, since we do have an election coming up, as I keep saying, I'm going to highlight our local, or provincial, I should say, political groups, and just based off of what their Facebook pages are saying. So, the last thing on the NDP Facebook page says, our leader John Horgan has called an election for October 24th. What does this mean? It means British Columbians will decide how we all move forward. British Columbians deserve to have a say in what type of economic recovery and future they want for themselves and their families and communities. Now, more than ever, we need a government that puts people first, and as we keep moving BC forward, we need to know that you are with us. On the Liberal Facebook page, while British Columbians are trying to get through the pandemic, John Horgan, the NDP leader, is busy looking out for himself. Instead of helping those in need, he's putting government on hold with his risky pandemic election to try and secure his power. This is dangerous. This is a dangerous power grab by the NDP's Horgan. He's risking our health and our economy for his own ambition. The NDP leader isn't working for you. He's just working for himself. The Green Party says that, so this is from Sonia Furstenau, and I will learn how to say all these names, but she is the leader of the BC Green Party. So she released a letter that was sent to John Horgan on September 18th, 2020, that outlined the areas that still need strong action and continued cooperation from our two parties. Horgan disregarded the many reasons not to call an early election, blinded by the pursuit of political power. So that is what all the political parties are saying on their Facebook pages. Now, the people that are running in our riding are, of course, Jackie Taggart, our local MLA, who is currently elected to the position. The NDP candidate is named Aaron Sumexheltza, and on his Facebook page it says Aaron is a lawyer, former chief and a counselor of the Lower Nicola Indian Band. He was born in Merritt and lives in the Nicola Valley. Aaron is actively involved in his community, passionate about his environment and protecting the interests of rural BC. The Green Party is putting out Jonah Timms. He says, I am the BC Green Party's candidate for Fraser-Nicola. Our campaign offers an opportunity for voters to vote with their hearts and minds in offering fiscal responsibility, a sustainable recovery from COVID-19, and a reconciliation with First Nations. So those are the three people from the bigger parties that are running. And once we find out if anybody's running independently, we will, of course, follow them as well. We will try and get interviews with all of these people and maybe even host some kind of town hall or debate if we can. Maybe virtually, but we will keep you all posted on our progress with that. Now, let's talk about some things going on in the country. So according to the BBC, this is what to expect from tomorrow's federal throne speech. So Justin Trudeau is expected to make some kind of a speech tomorrow in regards to his economic plan. So the Liberal government is expected to announce plans to tackle both the immediate crisis, a new surge in COVID-19 cases as the country enters the colder months, and a roadmap for a longer-term recovery. Mr. Trudeau has said he sees this moment as an opportunity to build back better because a window of opportunity won't be open for long. He has also said that beyond the future challenges, dealing with a pandemic is job number one. So what might that look like? Mr. Trudeau said that recovery means a greener, healthier, and more competitive Canada. More specifically, Reuters reports that the immediate to-do list will include investment in childcare, and an expanded employment insurance program, and funds for long-term care homes, which were particularly hard hit early in the pandemic. Election talk and a new opposition. So the throne speech has led to plenty of speculation about Canadians heading to the polls this autumn. The speech will prompt a confidence vote in the House of Commons, a key test of whether a sitting government has the confidence of the majority. So, of course, for the last 3 weeks, the federal government has been prorogued due to Justin Trudeau shutting everything down. So there hasn't been any parliament going on federally. So that being said, our local MP, Brad Viss, says that the House of Commons is undertaking electronic voting for the first time in Canadian parliamentary history. He says that I have serious concerns with this method and its potential for setting undemocratic precedents. So during today's dry run, MPs were missed. MPs voted twice, and there were technical difficulties preventing MPs from participating, infringing on their parliamentary privilege. So that is them getting set up to move forward past the throne speech. He continues to say that I hope that this is a temporary measure during the COVID-19 pandemic only, and that there is a swift return to solely in-person voting. So that is what Brad Viss has to say about all of this. And we have a pic of Brad supporting the new Conservative logo. So that's fun. And that brings us to the end of today's show. So, Annette Pittman, if you are watching, happy birthday, and we hope that you are having an excellent day. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you on Friday.